The mashed potatoes were still steaming when my dad cleared his throat and dropped the bomb. "We're selling the house," he said, scooping gravy like it was just another Tuesday dinner. I froze, my fork hovering over the plate. "Wait, what?" I managed, glancing at my older brother, Ethan, whose face mirrored my shock. Mom kept her eyes on her plate, pushing peas around like they betrayed her. 23 years in this creaky old house, and now this? I've been paying half the mortgage for 2 years, ever since I graduated college and started freelancing as a graphic designer. I thought I was keeping our family afloat, not bankrolling a plan to dismantle my life. The dining room smelled like rosemary and regret. I'd spent all afternoon cooking: roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, a cranberry chutney I perfected after 3 tries. It was supposed to be a rare night where we all sat together. No phones, no fights. Ethan had driven 3 hours from his city apartment, and I'd pulled out all the stops: good plates with gold trim, a sandalwood candle flickering in the center, a playlist of soft jazz I thought might keep things calm. I wanted one evening where we felt like a family, not just four strangers sharing a zip code. But Dad's words shattered that hope. "We're selling, and we're moving to Florida," he added, like he was suggesting a weekend getaway. "Retirement's calling." I stared, waiting for a punchline that never came. I set my fork down, hands trembling. "I've been paying half the mortgage, Dad. My job's here, my clients, my friends, my whole life." He shrugged, glancing at Mom for support. "You'll figure it out, Claire. You're young. Plenty of time to start over." Mom nodded faintly, her gaze still glued to her plate. Ethan, usually quick with a sarcastic jab, just sat there, jaw clenched, staring at his untouched chicken. The candle's flame danced, casting shadows on the wallpaper I'd helped choose at 12. The house itself seemed to hold its breath, betrayed. I didn't yell or cry. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping the hardwood, and walked out. The clink of their forks chased me down the hall, a sound that felt like nails on a chalkboard. In my room, I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the lavender walls I'd painted at 16 despite Mom's protests. This room was my haven: faded band posters from high school, a corkboard pinned with college Polaroids, a window that stuck when it rained. I'd moved back home after graduation to save money and help out. Dad's construction business had tanked during the recession, and Mom's part-time library job barely covered groceries. So I stepped up, wiring half the mortgage every month for my freelance checks. I didn't mind at first. This was home, where I'd learned to rollerblade in the driveway, where Ethan and I built pillow forts during snowstorms. But now it was being sold, and I hadn't even been consulted. The betrayal stung like a slap. I didn't sleep, replaying Dad's shrug, Mom's silence. By morning, I'd decided, if they wanted to sell, I wasn't sticking around to be evicted. I grabbed my laptop and scoured apartment listings, the screens glow harsh in the dawn light. Rent prices were a gut punch, studios cost double what I'd expected, and anything affordable was an hour's drive from town. Still, staying wasn't an option. I packed a duffel with clothes, my laptop, a few sketchbooks, and the ceramic mug Ethan made in high school pottery class, its wonky handle a reminder of better days. I didn't know where I'd go, but I needed to be ready. When Mom shuffled in the kitchen for coffee, I was at the table, scrolling listings. She glanced at me, eyes puffy from sleep or wine. "Up early," she mumbled, pouring her coffee. I waited for her to ask what was wrong, to explain. She didn't. She just left, the door clicking shut. That silence hurt more than any argument. A week later, I was crashing on my friend Tara's couch in her tiny apartment, my duffel tucked under her coffee table. Tara, a barista with a heart bigger than her paycheck, insisted I stay. "As long as you need," she said, handing me a quilt her grandma stitched. I was grateful, but it felt like I'd gone from family anchor to charity case. At home, I'd been the glue, paying bills, cooking, keeping the Wi-Fi running. Now I was folding my clothes into a corner, trying not to disrupt Tara's life. Her tabby, Muffin, adopted me instantly, curling up on my lap while I worked as purring a small bomb. I spent days designing logos for clients, nights hunting for apartments. The options were bleak: overpriced lofts, basements with reviews warning of mold and mice. My savings were solid, but not infinite, and the thought of draining them on a deposit made me nauseous. Ethan called a few days into my couch exile. "You holding up?" he asked, his voice hushed, like he was sneaking the call. "I didn't know about the house, Claire." I swear. I believed him. Ethan had always called out our parents' nonsense, but he'd moved out at 19, escaping the slow rot of our family dynamic. They're acting like it's nothing, he said. Dad's already got a realtor sniffing around. I said I was fine, but my throat tightened, betraying me. He didn't push, just offered to help find a place. You're not alone, he said, and those words became my anchor. Ethan had always been my ally, sneaking me comics when I was grounded, teaching me to drive when Dad flaked. Knowing he had my back kept me from unraveling. Then came a text from my cousin Jenna. Heard you moved out? You okay? I frowned, confused. I hadn't told anyone but Tara and Ethan. When I called, Jenna hesitated before spilling. Mom was telling the family I'd chosen to leave to live my own life, like I was some restless kid chasing freedom. No mention of the house sale, no mention of my paying the bills. Jenna wasn't buying it. It didn't add up, she said. You're not the type to bail. I told her the truth, Dad's announcement, Mom's silence, the dinner that gutted me. She paused, then said, that's so wrong. I'm sorry. Her words were a small validation, but they sparked anger. Mom wasn't just selling the house. She was rewriting history to make me the villain. The rumors spread like wildfire. Aunt Karen sent a sanctimonious text about honoring your parents' choices. A cousin I barely knew unfollowed me on social media. My great-uncle called, leaving a voicemail about family loyalty. I wanted to scream. I'd honored them for years, pouring my paycheck into their house, dodging their jabs about my artsy job. Now, I was the selfish one. I couldn't let it stand. I opened my laptop and typed a post for the family group chat. Not a rant, but a clear, measured account. I detailed how I'd paid half the mortgage for 2 years, how Dad announced the sale over dinner, how Mom stayed silent. I read it thrice, heart pounding, then hit send. I closed my laptop, unsure if I just burned bridges or finally stood up for myself. The fallout was immediate. My phone buzzed for hours, texts, calls, notifications piling up like a storm. I didn't check it right away, too nervous to face rejection or silence. When I finally opened it, I was stunned. Uncle Mike, who avoided family drama, messaged, didn't know you were carrying that much. That's not right. Cousin Liam sent a quick damn, Claire, that's rough. Even Aunt Karen backpedaled with a sheepish, I didn't know the full story. Not everyone was supportive. Mom's sister, Aunt Diane, called my post disgraceful, accusing me of shaming the family. I didn't respond. I'd said my piece, and I wasn't groveling. Mom called that night. I let it go to voicemail, hands shaking. Her message was sharp, wounded. Claire, how could you? You're making us look like monsters. No apology, no mention of the years I propped them up. Just her, clutching her narrative. Ethan texted later, saying Mom was losing it at home, ranting about my betrayal. She's telling Dad you're being dramatic, he said. I laughed, bitter. Dramatic? I'd spent years swallowing their guilt trips, their snide remarks about my easy job, their complaints about the house I paid for. I'd been too quiet for too long. A few days later, I found an apartment, a one-bedroom on the edge of town, with scuffed floors and a noisy radiator. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I signed the lease, handed over my deposit, and felt a knot loosen in my chest. Tara helped me move, hauling boxes while Muffin supervised from her couch. This place is going to be yours, she said, taping a poster to my living room wall. I wasn't sure. The apartment felt empty, the silence jarring after years of chaotic house. But I unpacked my sketchbooks, set up my coffee maker, and hung fairy lights over the window, a quiet rebellion against the beige walls. It started to feel real, like a space I could claim. I didn't hear from Mom or Dad for weeks. Ethan kept me updated. The house was on the market, with open houses every weekend. They're struggling without your money, he said. Mom's panicking about bills. I felt a flicker of guilt, but I pushed it down. I'd done more than enough. I wasn't their bank or their scapegoat anymore. The silence from them was heavy, like a storm cloud refusing to break. I stayed busy, diving into work, sketching late into the night, trying to fill the void. But alone in my new bed, I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever been more to them than a paycheck. Ethan showed up one evening with a pizza and a six-pack, kicking off his sneakers like he owned the place. Housewarming. He grinned, setting the box on my wobbly thrift store table. We ate from the carton, laughing about old times, sneaking to concerts, prank-calling neighbors. Then he got serious. I'm proud of you, he said, cracking a beer. You didn't deserve that. I should have spoken up sooner. I teared up, blaming the pizza's spice, but his words hit deep. Ethan had always been my protector, distracting Mom during her moods, teaching me to stand up for myself. Having him here, in my new space, felt like a tether to the family we used to be. The next day, Jenna texted a screenshot of Mom's Facebook post, a vague rant about ungrateful kids and finding out who's really there for you. No names, but it was about me. Comments from her book club friends offered sympathy. Aunt Diane tossed in a heart emoji. My stomach twisted. She was still spinning her story, casting me as the villain. I wanted to comment to set it straight, but Ethan's words echoed. You don't have to play her game. I called Tara instead, venting until we were laughing at the absurdity. She's got nothing without you, Tara said. She was right. Mom's narrative needed my silence to work. I wasn't giving her that power. I leaned into my life, piece by piece. I bought a fiddle leaf fig, named it Fiona, and obsessed over its care. I joined an art collective, meeting painters and sculptors who pushed me to take risks. I posted my designs online, heart racing, and the response was electric. Clients reached out, strangers called my work vibrant. I sold prints, enough to buy a proper desk. The freedom was strange, like I was waiting for someone to tell me I was doing it wrong. But no one did. I could leave paint brushes in the sink, blast music at midnight, eat cereal for dinner. It was mine. Dad texted out of nowhere. Can we talk? No context, no apology. I stared at the message, thumb hovering. Part of me wanted to hear him out, to believe he'd see me. But Dad was all empty promises, vague plans that never happened. I replied about what, and got no answer. The silence was familiar, but it stung. I tossed my phone aside and sketched, channeling the hurt into bold lines. I wasn't chasing him. Not anymore. Ethan and I met for coffee weeks later at a cramped downtown cafe with mismatched chairs. He looked exhausted, his smirk gone. The house sold, he said, stirring his latte. They're moving next month. I nodded, the news a dull ache. They didn't tell me, I said, tracing my mug's rim. He shrugged. They're not telling anyone much. Mom's a mess since your post. Says you turned everyone against her. I snorted. I told the truth. Ethan leaned back, studying me. I know. It's eating her. She's not used to being called out. He described the chaos. Without my money, Mom and Dad were scrambling. They'd downsized their Florida plans, settling for a condo instead of a beach house. Mom took a full-time library job, grumbling nonstop. They thought you'd keep paying, Ethan said, like you were their retirement plan. I didn't know if I felt vindicated or sad. I'd bailed them out for years, thinking it was my duty. Now they were facing reality, and I was the scapegoat. Ethan squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, getting out. Don't let them drag you back. His words lingered. I reflected on the sacrifices, not just money, but pieces of myself. I'd skipped art retreats to cover bills, turned down dates to avoid judgment, dimmed my light to keep their world spinning. I'd thought it was temporary, that they'd appreciate me. They didn't. Now, in my own space, I saw how much I'd lost. Confidence, joy time. I've been so focused on being the good daughter, I'd forgotten how to be Claire. I threw myself into art. I landed a mural gig for a cafe, a branding project for a startup. I built a portfolio website, trembling as I hit publish. I started a sketchbook for me, wild, messy drawings that felt like freedom. My apartment transformed, teal accent wall, gallery of my work, vintage lamp from a flea market. I hosted a taco night for Tara and art friends, laughing until the neighbors complained. Every moment was a reclamation. Guilt crept in when Mom's number flashed on my phone. I let it go to voicemail, her voice a ghost I wasn't ready to face. One Saturday, sketching with Fiona, the plant basking in sunlight, I heard a knock. Mom stood there, clutching oatmeal cookies in Tupperware. I baked, she said, her smile brittle. I stepped in the hallway, arms crossed, door half open. What's this about? I asked, voice steady. She shifted, sneakers squeaking. I thought we could talk. It's been too long. I watch her fidget. Talk about what? I pressed. She sighed like I was difficult. About us. The family. I don't like how things are. I asked if she was apologizing. She froze, eyes darting to the cookies. We both said things we regret, she said tightly. I nearly laughed. I hadn't said anything, just the truth, in a post she never acknowledged. I told her I was fine, that I'd build a life without her drama. I hope Florida works out, I said, meaning it, but my tone was final. I closed the door, not slamming it, just letting it click. I tossed the cookies. They weren't a peace offering, just another prop. Months passed. My apartment became a sanctuary. Paint-splattered mugs, art books, a playlist always playing. Ethan visited often, talking about moving closer. Neighbors, he joked, but I saw he meant it. Jenna and I bonded over wine, laughing at family absurdities. Work soared. I landed a national brand contract. My designs, Perspective Designs, splashed across their social media. I started teaching art classes at the community center, watching kids discover creativity. It felt like sharing the joy I was reclaiming. I never took down my post. It wasn't spite, it was truth. Mom and Dad moved to Florida, struggling, bickering over money, isolated. I felt a pang, but it wasn't my burden. I'd carried their weight too long, only to be discarded. Now I was free to create, laugh, breathe. In my apartment, sunlight streaming, sketching new ideas, I felt certain. This was my life, built from scratch, and it was enough. I wouldn't trade it, not for a house, a family, or a past that never deserved me. The weeks after Mom's visit were quiet but deliberate. I focused on small victories, perfecting a new digital illustration technique, mastering a tricky risotto recipe, repotting Fiona when her roots outgrew her pot. I started running in the mornings, looping through a park near my apartment, the air sharp against my skin. It wasn't about fitness, it was about feeling alive, reclaiming my body from the stress that had once weighed it down. Each step was a reminder. I was here, I was enough. Tara noticed the change. Over brunch one Sunday, she tilted her head, studying me. "You're different," she said, spearing a piece of pancake. "Like lighter." I shrugged, but she was right. The constant tension I'd carried, bracing for Mom's next jab, Dad's next broken promise, was fading. I was learning to trust my own rhythm, to live without waiting for permission. Tara raised her mimosa. "To your glow up," she said, and I clinked my glass against hers, laughing. The art collective became my second home. We met weekly in a converted warehouse, its brick walls lined with easels and half-finished canvases. I started experimenting with mixed media, collages blending paint and vintage magazine clippings. One piece, a chaotic swirl of blues and golds with torn bits of old love letters, caught the eye of a gallery owner at a local showcase. "It's raw," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Got a story behind it." I smiled, vague. "Something like that." She offered to display it, and I agreed, my heart racing. Seeing my work framed, lit under soft gallery lights, felt like a milestone, not just as an artist, but as someone who'd stopped hiding. Ethan's updates grew sporadic but sharper. Mom and Dad's Florida life was unraveling faster than expected. The condo was smaller than they'd hoped, the neighborhood less vibrant. Mom's library job was grueling, her complaints a daily ritual. Dad spent hours on the phone with old business contacts, chasing deals that never panned out. "They're realizing what they lost," Ethan said during a late-night call. "Not just your money, but you." I wanted to feel smug, but mostly I felt hollow. I'd given them years of my life, and they'd traded it for a fantasy that was crumbling. One evening, Jenna invited me to a family barbecue, an olive branch from cousins who'd sided with Mom, but were now softening. I hesitated, picturing awkward small talk, veiled judgments. But Jenna insisted. "It's low-key. Just come." I went, armed with a bottle of rose and zero expectations. The backyard was familiar. Same sagging picnic table, same string lights from a decade ago. Most relatives were polite, some apologetic. Uncle Mike pulled me aside, his beard grayer than I remembered. "We got it wrong," he said, voice gruff. "Should have listened to you." I nodded, unsure what to say. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Mom and Dad weren't there, and their absence hung heavy. Jenna whispered that they declined, citing travel costs. I wondered if it was pride or shame keeping them away. Either way, I mingled, laughed, even danced with Jenna's kids to a cheesy pop song. For the first time, I didn't feel like the family outcast. I was just Claire, sipping wine, swapping stories about my mural project. Driving home, I realized I'd enjoyed myself. Not because the family had changed, but because I had. Work became a whirlwind. The national brand contract led to more gigs, packaging for a craft brewery, a website overhaul for a nonprofit. I hired an assistant, a recent grad named Sam, who shared my love for bold color palettes. Mentoring him felt strange but rewarding, like passing a torch I'd only just lit. The community center classes grew too. One student, a shy 12-year-old named Lila, reminded me of myself, quiet, unsure, but bursting with ideas. I gave her extra sketch pads, encouraged her to experiment. When she showed me a vibrant, abstract piece, her eyes bright with pride, I nearly cried. Keep going, I told her. You've got something special. Her grin stayed with me for days. I started dating tentatively. A photographer from the art collective, Leo, asked me for coffee. He was lanky, with a quick laugh and a habit of quoting old movies. Our first date stretched into hours, debating sci-fi classics over greasy diner fries. I liked his ease, how he didn't push or pry. We kept it light. Hikes, gallery openings, late-night texts about obscure fonts. I wasn't ready for anything serious, but Leo's company reminded me I could open up without losing myself. It was a new kind of freedom, one I hadn't known I needed. Ethan's move happened faster than expected. He found a loft 10 minutes from my apartment, close enough for impromptu dinners. We christened his place with takeout and a bad horror movie, laughing until our sides ached. This is what it should have been like, he said, sprawled on his couch. Just us, no baggage. I nodded, feeling the weight of our shared history. Ethan wasn't just my brother. He was my witness, the one who'd seen the chaos and still chose me. His move felt like a promise. We were building something new, together. Mom tried reaching out again, this time with a letter. It arrived in a plain envelope, her handwriting shaky. She wrote about Florida's humidity, Dad's new golf obsession, her job's long hours. Toward the end, she veered into us. I miss you, she wrote. I didn't mean for things to break like this. No apology, just regret framed as nostalgia. I read it twice, searching for accountability. There wasn't any. I didn't reply, but I kept the letter in a drawer, unsure why. Maybe as proof it happened, or a reminder of what I'd left behind. One crisp fall morning, I woke early and drove to the coast, an hour's trip I'd always meant to take. The beach was empty, waves crashing under a gray sky. I walked the shore, collecting smooth pebbles, letting the salt air clear my head. I thought about the house, its creaky stairs, the backyard swing, the lavender walls I'd never see again. It wasn't just a place, it was a version of me I'd outgrown. The girl who paid bills to prove her worth, who shrank to fit her parents' expectations. She was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who painted murals, taught kids, loved fiercely, and forgave slowly. Back home, I framed Lila's abstract piece next to mine in the living room. It wasn't just decor. It was a declaration of art, of growth, of second chances. I invited Tara, Leo, and Ethan over for dinner, grilling burgers on a cheap hibachi in the apartment's tiny courtyard. We ate under string lights, trading stories, music spilling from a portable speaker. Leo snapped photos, Tara teased Ethan about his terrible dance moves, and I laughed until my cheeks hurt. This was family, not the one I was born into, but the one I'd chosen. The post stayed up, a digital monument to my truth. I checked it sometimes, noting new reactions, like from distant cousins, a comment from an old neighbor. Proud of you. Mom and Dad's struggles filtered through Ethan, missed payments, strained silences. I felt sorrow, but not duty. They'd made their choices, just as I'd made mine. I wasn't their savior or their villain. I was Claire, artist, friend, sister, survivor. As winter loomed, I planned a solo trip to a nearby city, a weekend of museums and street art. I booked a cheap hotel, mapped out galleries, packed my sketchbook. It wasn't an escape. It was a celebration of the life I'd built, the person I'd become. Standing in my apartment, sunlight glinting off Fiona's leaves, I felt a quiet certainty. This was my story, written in paint and courage, and it was only the beginning. I wouldn't trade it, not for a house, a family, or a past that never earned me. So what did you think? Did Claire's story hit home? If you loved it, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell to join our community. We're working hard to bring you more stories like this, so share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Claire's shoes? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.